want the front lights off, right? Maybe better that way. Okay, so let's start with the first a couple of questions. So it's half a mark for each correct ratio. So when you have to identify or write the ratio, right, you will have to refer to the triangle that's next to it. And something that I forgot to add, right, was maybe the right triangle, right, the right angle. But it's always the longest side that's the hypotenuse, meaning that the 90 is going to be across from the longest side, right? Because all three sides are given. You could have figured that out that way, right? So the first thing I need you to look for is, what is the reference angle, right? When you have a question like this, because I will mix it up on you, where is my reference angle located, right? Actually, maybe we'll do a different highlight for the A, because it's C, C, and then it's A. So I'll use green for that, right? So when A is the angle that you're referencing, then you're there. If it's C, you are there, okay? So it makes a difference in terms of your labeling, okay? And please always have this on your study sheet for sure, but this is going to help you to know which of the three trig functions go with the two sides, right? And it will also tell you in which order to put them in. Okay, so let's start with C. If C is your reference angle, then this is the opposite. That is the hypotenuse. And this must be the adjacent, right? That's based looking out from C. Now we've labeled it. Now we're going to go back and say, okay, we want tangent. Tangent is O over A, opposite over adjacent. So it's 48 over adjacent, which is 14. Okay, we're looking at TOA here, right? So half a mark for getting that right. It's either right or wrong. There's nothing in between, okay? Next, we've got sine of C. So you're thinking so, right? We're still looking at the same reference angle, meaning that the labels we put in are still accurate. So we grab the opposite, which is 48, over the hypotenuse, which is 50, and you have that. So make sure you write this down as best as you can, okay? Next, we have cosine of A. Cosine tells you that you're having these two sides over here in that order. But now things change. So we got to go back to the triangle and say, okay, we are here now. Opposite, this one turns opposite. And this is now my adjacent. But notice that the hypotenuse never changes. Once you determine which one is the hypotenuse, it stays. Cosine is asking for adjacent over hypotenuse. So now the adjacent is 48 and the hypotenuse is 50. So look at this. They are the same numbers, but that shouldn't throw you off, right? If you're consistent with the steps, you should be able to get the right numbers in the right place. Okay? Good? Josh, if you want, I have one extra. I might have to make more copies then. I was going to say. Okay, let's keep going. Next, we have number 2, the same thing, but now it's a different triangle. I'm going to highlight Z. That's angle XZ. So that they have the same reference angle, and then X has a different reference angle. What I would suggest you do is start with one and then go over to the other. So I'm going to highlight Z here. That's in that corner. And X is in this corner. Okay. Let's start with labeling from Z. Opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. Okay. Yeah, I know. I will do the attendance a little later, folks. I know some of you joined. So let's try this again. I'm going to write down so because there's a sign. Toa, that doesn't change. And ka, that doesn't change, right? So it's got those. But let's look at sine of z. Based on z, we need opposite and hypotenuse. So that's 18 and 30. I'm going to skip tan of x because it has a different reference angle. I'm going to go to z again and get the adjacent and the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is still 30, right? That doesn't change. The adjacent is 24. Okay. Now, I'm going to go with x as my reference angle, meaning that if you're here, this now turns from opposite adjacent to opposite, and this one turns from opposite to adjacent. So you flip-flop them. Okay. So tan is asking for opposite, which is 24, over adjacent, which is 18. So there you have your three trig ratios written out. Okay. So maybe look at it this way. The opposite is opposite to the highlighted, and adjacent would be, right, if this is your angle, then opposite and adjacent would be in that order. If you're looking at this angle, this is now opposite, so the green pertains to that angle, and the green here pertains to that angle as well. Okay. Capiche? Don't fall asleep on me. I know this is a good bedtime story, right? Some of you are like, oh, I just had lunch. I'm feeling kind of tired. Mr. Dirksen has such a soothing voice. I'm slowly falling asleep, but don't, okay? And there's more review coming your way today, so that Monday's test, you're ready to go. By the way, okay, there's a good number of you that do not have your study sheet. I don't see you with a study sheet, okay? Make sure you have one and have put on there whatever you want. If it's a piece of loose leaf and you're starting from scratch, go for it. If you want to start with going through this worksheet that I'm doing right now, then do it, right? But you got to be prepared for questions like these. Okay, number 3, solve the indicated side or angle. Here, you need to kind of put your thinking hat on. You can use Pythagorean Theorem or what we call Trig or SOHCAHTOA. When do you use which, right? Here you need two sides, right? Here you would have an angle and a side. That's basically the main reason when you're solving for sides, that's what you go for. When you're trying to find an angle, you're always going to have to use SOHCAHTOA no matter what. But when it's finding sides, right, you have your pick here. In this case, we have a side and an angle. So you're going to have to use SOHCAHTOA. So how do you start? You're positioned here. You start labeling. This should be the 90-degree angle here. I should have added that. So add it now if you didn't know. Opposite is blank. Don't care about it. Leave it. Hypotenuse would be here. Adjacent would be there. because it's adjacent and hypotenuse, right? Adjacent hypotenuse goes with cosine. So you're kind of going backwards here. So you set it up. Cosine of 39 degrees, it always needs to have an angle attached to it, is adjacent 2.85 over hypotenuse, which in this case is unknown to me. Okay, you put the 1 here. That means you're going to have to multiply by 1 and divide by cosine of 39. So it's essentially 2.85, right? This is 2.85 here, divided by cosine of 39. And this is where having a good calculator comes in handy. Okay? 2.85 divided by cosine of 39. That's 3.67 yards. Done. 2 marks. Like you have the 2 marks there. So you essentially get, you would get 1 mark for the work and setup, and 1 mark for the correct final answer. Okay. And for today, if you have any work there, you give yourselves 1 mark. It wouldn't be like that on a test. I would have to see how it is. But right now, we just want to see that you're doing something, right? B, we're going to do this one. We have an angle and a side. We need to use SOHCAHTOA. You are positioned here, travel outwards. That's your opposite side. There should be a 90-degree angle here, so this will be the hypotenuse. We don't care about the adjacent. So O and H, the only one that has O and H is SO, right? So sine of 43, is opposite over hypotenuse, which is 1894.6, right? You put the 1 there just so you remember it's cross multiply and divide. So you multiply up in this case, divide down. You always start on the side where the variable is. That's where your journey starts. So multiply up, divide down. So it's 1894.6 times sine of 43. Oops. And that is 1292.11, and we are in meters. So there's your answer in that case. And it makes sense. It should be shorter than the hypotenuse, right? And there you have it. Next, when you have a question mark here, they're asking you for an angle. Okay, they're asking you to find angle S. You start the same way as you would normally. If this is the angle in question, you travel out opposite. You don't care about it because it's blank. Hypotenuse. And this is the adjacent. Again, A and H or H and A, right? The only ones that have it, I will write it down again. A and H is this one here, cosine. So you start this way. Cosine of S is equal to adjacent. It has to be in that order. If you get an error on your calculator, it probably means that you flip-flopped them. You did it the wrong way, or you're picking the wrong trig function to begin with. So cosine of S is equal to this, which we are going to come up with a decimal for. So 26.7 divided by 54.8, you get 0.4872. Right? So this is the same as that. So it's kind of weird that way, 3 things equaling each other, but it is true. Now we bring down the S. Angle S would be inverse, right? Cosine inverse, whatever this is. If this is sine, then there would be inverse sine. This is tan, this is inverse tan, okay? Of 0.4872. And you get 60.84 degrees. You need to use the second function on your calculator to get that. Okay, a reminder for Monday's test, right? So you come in at 12:30 in the cafeteria. Come straight to the cafeteria. It's all trig. Okay, so 2 marks for everything, right? So again, here, going back to B, setup and solving is 1, and answer is another 1, right? Same for this one, work is 1, answer is 1. Here again, work and setup is 1, answer is 1. So this page right now, we are at 9. We are out of 9 here. So 1 and 2 combined would be worth 3, because A, B, and C, they're each worth half a mark, right? And then question 3, each one of these is worth 2 marks. So it's a total of 9 right now, first page. I'll leave it there for a bit. Make sure you follow up. Let me know if you need me to go back to a question. And so what I'm going to do after this, I'm going to give you a bigger review to do. And that literally, if you work through that whole thing and you are able to do everything, you are in very good shape for the test. Okay? And I make all these worksheets basically on a daily basis for you to benefit from. Okay? Next page, D and E. Let's do those two. It didn't ask us to solve, no, just the side or the angle indicated. Okay. Here, I gave you the 90-degree angle, so this is D, 3D. How's that? 3D. So this is the angle in question. You put a big dot there, you travel out. This is opposite, hypotenuse, but it's blank, leave it. So this must be the adjacent. O and A, that is TOA, right? OA. That means that you have to use tan in this case. Tan of, don't use question mark, okay? Use a letter. Make up a letter if there isn't one. Tan of A is equal to opposite over adjacent, like that. Go another equal. So this, you should have an example on your study sheet how to find angles, okay? Maybe 2 with a diagram and how you did it, okay? And so in this case, 7.9 divided by 8.3, and you write down up to 4 decimals, I should say, right? It's that. Angle A would therefore be tan inverse. And a lot of calculators do brackets, okay? You can't go wrong if you put a bracket in there. And make sure your calculator is actually set to degrees. If not, you're not going to get the same answers. Please do that before you start your test as well, because sometimes it changes because you're pressing buttons and it's pressing buttons on your backpacks or binders. Again, 1 mark for setup and work, and 1 mark for the correct final answer. Make sure it's always degrees. Inverse functions always have degrees. Okay. Now we have a multi-step situation. And notice that they're asking us to solve for sides here, right? X and Y. You should start with the triangle that has the most information, which is this one. I will start here, and then I will go over there. If you're looking at this triangle here, this is you're missing a leg there, right? X is one of the legs of the triangle. Use Pythagorean theorem. So x would be the square root of, and you got to take your hypotenuse, subtract the other leg from it. Okay? And then type it in. Type in the inside first. You get 773.5221. Don't round too soon there. And taking the square root of this answer is 27.81 yards. You get 1 mark for all of this. Okay, this is worth 1 mark for getting x right. So I will just make sure this is on the first triangle here that I started with, right? Sometimes you want to start on the right, sometimes on the left. It depends on which triangle has the most info, okay? And you need a right triangle, okay? So don't think you can use that big one here. It's not going to work for you. 2, I'm solving for y. Y is the hypotenuse. So it's still square root, but in this case, you're going to add the 2 legs. So we add the 24.9, square it, this leg here, and this 2781, which was also one of the legs, right? And then you type that in, you get I was looking at the wrong side, guys. I was looking at the wrong number on my thing, so I apologize. I know a quick fix. Yeah, I know you're complaining already. Hold on. Quick fix, okay? All the x's here are erased. No, it's not a quick fix. That'll actually, because this is right here. This is x. But then this is 153.51. Oh boy. I was too excited and I wasn't looking at the right place. This is 153.51. So this minus that is 153.51. That's still always x. And so that's 12.39. Is that good? Does that clarify things? That's why. Yeah. John and Isabel, you should be fine now. And then when we're finding y, it's going to be this leg squared plus the one we just found, which is x. That's 12.39 squared. And now we have 773.5221, and we get 27.81 yards. So 1 mark for each correct answer. So D was worth 2, E was worth 2. Now F, it says draw a triangle and then solve the triangle. I will give you a little tip. I would leave this as is. Don't draw anything right under it because you can easily solve for x there already. So I would draw my triangle like somewhere off on the side here. Doesn't matter how you draw it as long as it's a right triangle. Okay, there's a right triangle. 67, you put it here or there, it's up to you. I would put it down here. And remember, tan, right? You should be thinking TOA. So the 9 goes to the opposite and the x goes to the adjacent. So if this is your triangle and this is the angle where you put that 67 on, then the opposite is 9, hypotenuse is here, and the adjacent is x. So that's how you draw your triangle. All right, and then we're asked to solve the triangle, meaning find all sides, all angles. So this is a little bit where you can choose which path you want to go, which order you want to take. I'm just going to copy this one more time. This is the same thing as 9 over x, like that. You put the 1 here, you start with the 9, cross multiply down, divide up. So it's 9 divided by tan of 67. Okay? And so we get out of this, let's make sure I look on the right line here. It's 3.82, and we don't know what the units are, so we'll just put down units. So this side is actually now 3.82 units. Okay, we can actually, if you, I don't need you to fill it in over there by the triangle, but that's what we found. Okay, and then we're going to find this side using Pythagorean theorem, because now you have two sides, you can find the third one. Call it something. Let's call that y. Okay, so y is the hypotenuse, so it's going to be the square root of 3.82 squared plus the other leg squared. That's 95.5924. That's 9.78 units. So let's break this down. You get 1 mark for this, 1 mark for this, and you're going to get another mark for finding this angle up here. Call it something. Uppercase A is a great name to have as an angle, because A angle, right? Angle A is going to be 180 minus 90 minus 67, and that's 23 degrees. Also 1 mark there. So if the diagram is missing, I would take off 1 mark, but really I'm just looking for this, this, and this. If the 23 shows up, great. If the 9.78 shows up, but you should have a way to point it to the diagram. Where is it? Where would it be found on your diagram? If you write the 23 degree in here and you write the side lengths in there, I would be fine as well, because you're telling me you understand what's happening. Okay, so F is worth 3 marks there. And again, you could have started with finding the 23 degrees and then worked your way around and solved for the rest, or use trig twice. Francis, is your hand up, or did you say something? And for the diagram, how did you know the hypotenuse was not labeled? How did I know that it wasn't? Francis? Yes. Okay. Well, for any of these questions, right? And now I need to scrap paper, otherwise I'm not going to have room. But for any of these questions, right, you're going to have to start with a right triangle, right? It's up to you how you want to graph it, right? You want to do it upside down? Sure, right? If you want a challenge, go for it. Okay, so So it doesn't matter how you draw it, you're going to have to draw it. And the angle that they give you, the 67, you know it cannot go here, right? Where you placed your 90 degree, it cannot go there. So it has to go here or there, right? You could have said, hey, I want 67 degrees to be up there. If that's the case, then you label, then this is the opposite, that's the hypotenuse, and that's the adjacent. Okay? In this case, they were saying that tan of 67 is 9 over x. And you know that 9 goes to the opposite, x goes to the adjacent. So no matter what, the hypotenuse doesn't get a number or a variable associated with it, right? No matter how you go about it, if you put the 67 here, opposite is 9, adjacent is x, right? It cannot go where the hypotenuse is because it didn't. Tangent does not deal with the hypotenuse at all. So it's kind of like a blank at first. And then when we try to solve it, we'll find it. But we'll first always find our unknown, in this case the adjacent, and then once you have any two sides, you can use Pythagoras to find the third. Does that make sense, Francis? Yeah? I hope you're not just saying yes, but you actually mean it. I hope that clarified it. Okay. Question 4. Good question though, Francis. A sledding slope is 300 yards long. I hope that a slope is either going up or down, right? I hope that kind of gave it away that it's a ramp of some sort. And it has a vertical drop of 27.6 yards. Find the angle of depression. There it is. Angle of depression of the slope. Draw a diagram, then solve. If you see the words angle of depression, you know you have a triangle that goes like this. Okay? Or it could be going the other way if you want, right? But it's going to be flipped upside down because we know that the angle of depression is measured between the horizontal and the line of sight looking down. So this is depression right here or here, okay? They want to know what that angle of depression is. So I'm going to stick with this diagram here. Which one is the slope out of the three sides? That one I know is 300 yards long. This is my slope here. So 300 yards should go there. It says that it has a vertical drop. Vertical is up and down, right? I also told you that in your notes. Might have been a while ago, but it's still there. Okay? Vertical is up and down. Okay? So even though you didn't know much about it, right, you can kind of eliminate where it should not be going. And you have this. So based on that, this is your opposite side. You basically always have to label. There's no way around it. Opposite and hypotenuse, we're thinking so. So it's a sine scenario. So sine, I'm going to call this A, is opposite over hypotenuse. I come up with a decimal, that's 0.092. A is going to be sine inverse. Why sine? Because I started with sine of this, and you get 5.28 degrees. So you get 1 mark for the diagram, 1 mark for the work, and 1 mark for the correct final answer. And if anything else, you make sure you write this down so you're on top of things, okay? All right, last one. Find the angle of elevation. That should also tell you something. You should go back in your notes and copy the diagram where I talk about angle of elevation and depression, because if not, you're gonna struggle. Okay. The angle of elevation of the sun when a 14.5 meter telephone pole casts a 19 meter shadow, right? So find the angle of elevation of that. So it doesn't matter what you do, angle of elevation will always be between the horizontal and the line looking up. This is your pole. Okay. This is the shadow, right? Like if the sun shines up here, it will cast a shadow which is this long. Okay. So this is the 19 meters shadow. Last time I checked, the shadow is always on the ground, right? The pole is 14.5 meters. Somebody has a question? Oh. For question 4, I was 1/10 away from the answer. Do I mark it wrong? Like you got 5.18? Oh, so 5.27 or something? 29? Okay, it depends. Did you use, yeah, sorry, that should be, just take off half a mark, okay? It's not wrong, it's just half a mark. Francis, is your hand still up or is it from earlier? Okay. My bad, no problem. Okay, let's finish this. So we have our shadow, we have our pole, the sun is up here, which it's almost like we don't really need to, we don't worry about the dimensions or anything for it, we just focus on this, right? Because the light shines and it creates this shadow down here. They want the angle of elevation, so question mark, we're going to call that A. So let's see what we have. Based on this angle, we have the opposite, which is the pole. We have the adjacent, which is the shadow. So that's a TOA example. So tan of A is going to be opposite over adjacent, which is 0.7632. It's so repetitive, guys, like you can almost, right? I know this is tough, the diagram, I get it. But the solving part, you can still score marks there, okay? Tan of inverse of 0.7632, you get 37.35 degrees. And those that haven't done it, make sure you actually get this answer by actually typing it on your calculator and making sure you get it right. So this is worth 2 marks as well. Okay? All right. What we're going to do next, you're supposed to get 22 here in total. That's the total final mark here. So I'm going to go backwards and tell you what everything is out of. Okay? And then you give it a mark out of whatever it is. Question 5 is out of 3. Okay, question 5 is out of 3. So 1 for the diagram, 2 for the work and answer. If you messed up on the diagram, but the work is correct based on your diagram, you get 2 out of 3. Okay? Let's go to question 4. Question 4 is also worth 3 marks. And the same thing applies. 1 for the diagram, 2 for the work and correct answer. If you forgot the degree sign, you have to take off half a mark, right? If you didn't do rounding properly, take off half. Maximum of 1 mark penalty per page. So F is worth 3 marks. It's 1 for each answer basically. If the diagram is missing, I would take off half a mark. Next, E is worth 2 marks, 1 for each answer, x1, y1. D is worth 2 marks, 1 for setup and work, 1 for correct final answer. Back to the front. C is worth 2 marks, 1 for work, 1 for answer. B is 2 marks, A is 2 marks. That's all question 3, right? And going back up, question 2 is 1.5, basically half a mark per question. And question 1 is also worth 1.5. Total of 22. So put that down. And I will ask you to